sort of interesting layering of energy, more for the past couple of days. But it's been kind of this energy to where you can feel it, but putting it into words, either the vocabulary's not there yet, or it's not ready to be. The energy's not ready to be put into words yet. And it's funny because I'm noticing these daily vibes, like they. It may seem silly, but I didn't think about it at first that they do tend to segue into each other. And so, like, if you see these daily vibes and it's not the day that I put it together, it doesn't mean that it's not resonant for the day that you see it. That might be divinely timed, right? And I'm thinking to do a divine nugget about divine timing and how it works like that. And it definitely feels like today's themes include, for those of you who are open to it, available to it, learning about divine timing, what it looks like, what it feels like, what it is like, I suppose, for a lack of a better way to put it. And the other part of the energies that I've been sensing are kind of a wistfulness, like not a bad one per se, just more kind of the recognition. How do I put it? It's sort of like a second rite of passage, like when you're 12 to 13 and you start getting feedback that you're too big to play on the little kid toys, you know, or maybe even younger than that, depends on how quick you grew, but like that point in time when you were no longer a little kid, but you're not quite an adult yet, you know, and there's certain things that that really spoke to your child heart that you liked doing and you wanted to keep doing, and the world was giving you feedback that you're too big, you're too old, you're too something to be able to do those things anymore. And you can feel in your heart that you still really resonate with that stuff. You don't want to let that stuff go. And it feels kind of like letting go of the sweetness and then trying to embrace this really abstract concept of what it means to be an adult. And except it's a little different. It feels like this time it's a wizened one where you're in that feeling again and looking back and recognizing there are so many parts of childhood, of teenagerhood, of young adulthood that you really like and want to hold on to, but kind of feel like it's time to let that sweetness go for whatever the current version, the abstract of being adult means. Um, but it feels like there's a recognition that although there's a lot of voices that are saying this is what it means to be adult, or that is what it means to be adult, or you know, being an adult means this and this and this and this, um, your inner voice is speaking up and saying, no, sweetheart, that does not have to be the way that you adult. That does not have to be the way that you do the big, you know? And, but it still feels like the transitional period in the middle where, yes, you're aware you can choose what kind of adult you want to be. I mean, look at how many different kinds of adults there are. There's really immature adults, there's adults who only care about themselves. There's adults who are really playful and care for everybody. And there's adults that aren't playful and still care for everybody, but they do it in a weird sort of way. There's adults who have many children, and there's adults who have none or few. You know, there's all sorts of ways to adult, and so collectively we may be recognizing that we do have the choice in how we want to do. We can. There's plenty of adults who live childlike and not in no bad ways, in all the best ways. Like they still do their self-care. They still are there for their kids and their friends and their families. But you know, they kind of live in their own wonderland, and there's nothing wrong with that. It works for them. It benefits them, and they have found a balance between that, inner child, childlike blend that they very much like and want more of in their lives. They can be serious when they need to be, and they can also it's 11:11 on the clock. They can flow through energies as they need to, but they live predominantly in that delightful childlike energy. And it doesn't mean as a child you don't have to be a little or talk like a little or anything. Just that sense of wonder and curiosity and innocence and everything that they do. And I have a feeling like collectively a lot of people are really resonating with going towards that sort of living. It does feel very aligned, especially to light work and things like that. But whatever way that it comes to you, it still feels like there's a bit of mourning. Like, even if the old you, the older versions of you were completely toxic and not getting you anywhere, that still was there was still several chapters of your life. And to release that part of you still feels like releasing a very, very close friend that you had very high hopes for, that the way that they lived took a toll, and they had to go far, or they had to pass into non-physical, that sort of thing. Like, so that shedding the layer of the old version of us, there's still kind of this wistful mourning feeling to it, that it's like, I know the old me does not serve me anymore. I know the old versions of me do not serve my loved ones anymore. I cannot act in those ways. I cannot be so thoughtless towards others. I cannot just spend whatever I want to spend on whatever I want. I cannot just do whatever I feel like. I must be more responsible. I must work on my executive functioning skills. I must think about how my actions right now, little and big, will have an effect on those nearest and dearest to me. I must consider the forward and the backward of what I do. And then, but it's wistful more so than mournful, because there's also this sense of adventure on the other side of that stuff. Like, yes, there's squishies and vulnerabilities and letting go of past versions of ourselves, of the armor and the toughness and the caretaking and the codependence and the needing to be needed and all that stuff. And, but it feels like there are much grander and greater adventures on the other side of releasing those former versions of ourselves. And so it's like, almost like just in that just sense of like, okay, I know it is time to release those old versions lovingly, faithfully, and I'm gonna treasure them, for better and for worse, the good and the bad, the messy and the I don't know, the organization that ended up coming out of the chaos that I never even saw until moments now, and that I won't even fully understand until moments beyond now. But I want those adventures, because it feels collectively like we have this energy of like the old ways that we've been doing things collectively. Not only are they not good for us, have they not been good for us, not great for the earth around us, not great for each other, they just become kind of boring. The same cycles over and over and over. And this is especially true if you've been doing that, or somebody you're connected with, or many people you're connected with have been doing that, have been repeating the same cycles over and over again, which really they haven't. It is a spiral cycle. They do come up, but some people only take a very small sliver of an elevation each time they go up, whereas other people allow themselves to flow naturally, and it seems like they're glowing up really, really fast, but really they're not. They're just not resisting the evolution anymore. And it feels like that's kind of part of this collective energy, is releasing resistance to, I want to say what naturally is, but it also feels like some of it's like it's a new sort of natural. It's not the old sort of normal natural. It's kind of a mixture of a unique natural versus a co-created collective manifestation of what is now natural. And that could be things like naturally allowing friendships to exist that have always been good, or allowing friendships to evolve into relationships, or allowing relationships that have just not been working to devolve into friendships, or less than that, um, allowing maturity lessons to come in and finding a way, rather than just saying, fine, I'll do it because it's the thing to do, saying, how can I find a way to do this in a spirit that makes me feel good about why I'm doing it and what I'm doing. Kind of that sort of maturity lesson. It also feels kind of like a Seven of Pentacles day, which reminds me I'm going to pull a card for today, or at least pull my magic hat out. Everybody likes my magic hat. It feels like a Seven of Pentacles sort of day, where we're like kind of just wistfully looking at the garden that we've grown. What weeds do we like that we want to keep? What things did we grow on purpose that we want to keep? What new things do we want to plant? Is there anything we want to take out? And being grateful for what's there, especially, I think, in the sense because of the garden aspect, the roots. I think we're really examining where our roots have really been. I had a vision about that. It was either this morning or last night. About last year, there was a large energy of people saying, I want to plant roots. I want to lay down roots. Roots. And it feels like right now, especially in this Taurus energy, happy Taurus season, by the way, I'm going to do a reading about that soon, that we are recognizing we never had to plant roots. We couldn't plant roots, and we never had to plant roots because we already had roots. And it feels like that Seven of Pentacles sort of energy is that realization that, oh, because I already had roots over here with my children, with my inner child, with this person, with my twin flame, with my soulmate, with my family, with my job, within myself. I already had roots. I didn't have to plant them. I only had to tend them, right? Or rather, I only had to stop stepping on the plants when they came up and let them grow. And so too would my abundance and my happiness and my fulfillment. So the card that came out for the Rider-Waite deck, Five of Pentacles. It's funny that I said that. Five of Cups, with maybe some Five of Pentacles energy in there, which is kind of feeling left out. And also the spiritual wisdom often gained in moments when we feel left out. Now with the Five of Cups, what I'm being called to see is that on this card, there is a river in front of the figure. And in the distance, there's it's not quite a castle. You know what it looks like? It looks like what used to be a castle, and part of it is kind of crumbled off. And what feels like it sticks out the most is that the figure is across the river from the castle. Like, it feels like they should have been, like, that was a castle that they tried to build, that they tried to have, or they tried to keep. And now they have moved across the river to signify an emotional move. And it feels like a lot of times this card gets interpreted as like the cups got kicked over, but not by the figure in there. They just generally got kicked over, and when that happened, the figure in there is sad, and they're not looking at the Two of Cups that they still have behind them, but they're noticing that within the Three Cups, one of them was poison. Two were wine, and one was poison, and all three were given to them. And it is divinely timed that for whatever reason, whether it was an I wanted to call it a motion quake, a moonquake, that happened that knocked them over, or whatever reason, it saved them. And yes, they are sad about that. Well, you know what? It's funny because a lot of people, what I was going to say is a lot of people interpret as they're not seeing that. It feels like that's what this card is showing, is that for today, daily vibes and, vibes in general, whenever you see this video, it's about that divine timing of, if these cups had not been kicked over, if the fight had not happened, if the words had not been said, if the scam had not happened, if the cheater hadn't been cheated, things like that, I would not have known that one cup was poisoned. I would have possibly drank that cup. Because I didn't, I can now see, thanks to divine timing, that the Three Cups, which is usually a third party situation, that situation was genuinely toxic, not just metaphorically, like literally toxic. And I have two cups behind me that are stable and strong and full of water, which is what I really need, that emotional water, that healing. And so it feels like the figure has stepped back from the castle across the emotional waters. They are seeing in front of them this Three Cups, the three-party situation, knocked over. There was poison in it, bad spell work in it, toxicity, and that is why they left the castle situation, which could be just in their thoughts and hearts so far, or your hearts and thoughts right now. But like, it's a moving away from that castle situation, because the Three of Cups and the castle can be seen together. And it feels like, for today at least, that this person is recognizing they've outgrown that situation. That's the river in there. And what they need to do next is to turn around, to allow the Three Cups to be on the ground, to not try to refill them, because there will always be one of them that has poison in it, to turn around and see the Two of Cups that have roots, that aren't going to fall over, that are good. And it feels like the figure knows this at this point, but they're still kind of mourning the old situation. They had high hopes in it. They had attachment to it, and they can see it was their own emotions that were coming in and also poisoning the situation. And they're recognizing that it's still ouchy, it's still squishy. And you know what, that's funny. So of the energy oracle, we got 5th chakra, Archangel Gabriel, which tells me that collectively we are speaking more truths to ourselves, and we are preparing to speak more truths to others. We're telling, because a lot of times when people lie to you, it's not because they're genuinely wanting to lie to you, it's because they are lying to themselves. And when we lie to ourselves, we lie to everybody else. When we tell ourselves the truth, we speak the truth to others. And so it feels like that's some incoming energy. It feels like today we're in the energy of that, of speaking the truth, doing things like that. I don't know if that means that you will get some sort of communication or give some kind of communication, but communication is involved in there, and it's emotional communication. So I will say this: if some emotional communication comes from you and you send it to somebody, don't do it with an expectation that they're definitely going to be in that energy or respond well or anything to it, because you love how you feel when you're being genuine, when you're being honest, when you're sharing things. And likewise, if somebody sends you an emotional communication, don't feel like, even if it's felt kind of feast or famine with this person and the moments that you can connect with them, don't feel rushed to respond. Don't feel like you have to be in the energy that they're in if you're not. Whether it's lovely, wistful, playful communication, or sadness, old thoughts, or anger, or anything, and just try to keep your try to well have your human. I was gonna say your immune experience, which is weird. Have your human experience. And I mean, if you feel upset, feel upset. If you feel sad, do that stuff. But try to get yourself back to a general alignment and equilibrium of having compassion for everyone and anyone, even more so if this is somebody that did like hurt you or trigger you or bring you into your ego, because it helps you get to those healing moments later. And then you see it, and then you're like, oh crap, that was divinely timed. And I really appreciate them for that. So even if you haven't seen that yet, practice as if you have, and if you are. And I can almost guarantee that it'll go way better than you could have expected if you're holding in a space of kind of emotional armor about interactions. Just allow them to be as they are. I think I'm going to end the daily vibe here. Thank you for hitting that like button and adding your vibes to the tribes. I'll see you in the next video.